What is up, my trunk slaying friends? It's Monday. That means it's Spicy Monday. And I will admit I had a pretty good weekend. I have pretty low spice for you today. This is more of a mild annoyance. But I want to talk a little bit about, and for lack of a better term, lazy cold marketing. And before I get into it, I want to acknowledge I understand that prospecting leads sucks. Like I know a few of you enjoy doing it and we all think you're lunatics, but like for the most part I get it. Like it's not a wonderful experience. Most of us would rather not have to scrub lists, and I appreciate that list scrubbing is something that takes time and effort and knowledge. At least someone's knowledge. And I just want to get that out of the way. I understand all of that. I appreciate all of you who do this for a living. You're super important. I'm still mad at you. So I want to talk a little bit about that. So to be completely clear, I have no problem being marketed to. And I do think, just on a quick side note, I think that the weird trend I've seen last few years of folks calling out being marketed to, I think that's bizarre. Like, it, first of all, for people like me that post a lot or exist in basically the town square, the public forum, well, it's like being mad about having a photograph taken of you in a public place. Like, what do you're already out there. People are going to get to know who you are and want to solicit you. But more importantly, when you go to events that generate marketing lists by engagement, I expect to be marketed to. I'm okay with that. I really don't mind that. If you scan my badge and, so I can grab a free t-shirt, or just because I'm walking by, or because I went to an event, virtual or physical, and there's an attendee, whatever. I genuinely don't care. That, to me, that's part of the expectation of attending that. So given that I'm open to be, there's, so think of another way, there's no trespassing sign up on my homestead. I don't mind if you want to come try and solicit, but what I don't like is when you walk up the path to my house, you get to the front door, you haven't looked at anything along the way, you knock on the door, I come to the door looking like this, and I'm presented with a sort of like, hello, sir or ma'am, do you own a homestead? Would you be interested in things that homesteading people need? Like, dude, like, first of all, I'm right here. I'm a person. Talk to me like a person. And then secondly, like, well, I mean, you've been on my property for, 15 to 30 seconds. What does it look like? Like, come on. That's more what I'm talking about. It's the digital version of just clearly showing that you're not making the effort. And I don't think it's really that hard. If you were an MSP, I would understand the argument that you're marketing to thousands of local small businesses. They're all different. You need to have relatively standardized general marketing. Yes, I know you should have a vertical, market to the vertical, but whatever. I would understand the excuse a little more if an MSP made it, but a vendor to MSPs, your verticals are MSPs, MSSPs, people who think they're MSPs or MSSPs, and the economy that supports them, like vendors. Like, guys, like, that's a really narrow vertical. It's not hard to take 2 extra seconds to figure out exactly which one of those things the person you're speaking to falls into. And then from there, figure out a way to slightly tweak your pitch. And there's a reason for this. I am going somewhere with this. So going back to that door-to-door marketing example, I want everybody to go back in time for a minute with me to a time period when appliances and things like that were not commodity consumables that fell apart and you simply spent $100 and had another one next day shipped to you from Amazon. Like back when you would, for example, like a vacuum, it was an investment. It would also last 30 years and you would go get it. So you drive to your nearest Sears and Roebuck service center. Who remembers those? To go get it fixed. Like, right. Like back when this was a quality product. And how largely were those sold? Well, besides catalogs and magazines and TV adverts, eventually, they were primarily sold by door-to-door cold salespeople. Somebody would pick a neighborhood, they would go around and they would attempt to do the, the demo and the pitch. Let me show you how it works so that you will buy one. And what I'm saying, you'll notice, is extremely similar to how a lot of vendors position their products now in our space, right? Your product is high quality. It is an as-a-service investment. It's going to be supported by a team of experts, or it's been curated. You're selling the digital version of the same experience. This is not a garbage product. This is a quality product that is going to have a long-term investment from both of us for this product to work, right? And so getting back to the sales guy, what's one massive difference between your first touch then versus now? That sales guy back in whatever, the 50s, the 60s, he probably doesn't know how the vacuums are manufactured. There's probably a good chance he couldn't fix most problems with it. I doubt he knew how to sinter metal or, how to wire up a circuit if it blew. But so yeah, he didn't know every detail, but you can damn be sure that when he was at your front door, he knew who you were, he knew exactly what problems you had, and he was a fucking expert on that vacuum in front of you, right? From the minute he knocked on the door and you answered it, that person was an expert representative of that brand and that product, because trust was important, and establishing that competency early is what would cinch that sale. In fact, to the point where it's a trope and a meme that we all carry over of the traveling salesperson from that time period. And yes, I understand that's soul crushing. We've done entire plays about how soul crushing that is. But the point is, the person was an immediate subject matter expert. I want you to tell me the last time you had, let's pick on security as a service. When the last time you had a security as a service vendor do their cold outreach, where from the very first touch point, you immediately said, I'm talking to a fucking expert. Find me one. I mean, I'm even talking about good companies that we like. Their cold email or their cold outreach still comes across like this is some fucking idiot who doesn't know what they do and doesn't give a shit, that's trying to get me to set up a demo that's unqualified, not aligned with my pain points, and they have no idea who I am. You see the problem with all of that? The whole reason why the vacuum sales analogy worked, right? And the whole reason why everybody wants to copy the spirit of that digitally is you're establishing from the beginning brand loyalty and subject matter expertise to build a long-term buying relationship. But that only works if from the beginning you demonstrate that expertise. And no, we don't expect the person who is doing the cold outreach to know everything about your product and how it works. I'm totally fine with them, answering in ways like, hey, I just set the appointments. I don't know all the details of the product. But I do expect they're going to demonstrate expertise on behalf of your brand. And when I see spelling errors, when I see things like they clearly don't know what business I'm in, or they name the wrong business that I'm in, or they ask me, what do you do? And it's not 5 minutes into a conversation where they're trying to stroke my business ego by asking me more about my business. They're literally starting off by saying, hello, Dean, what kind of business do you have? Like, it doesn't communicate expertise. And it doesn't help anyone. And it doesn't help do anything other than create more noise. So at this point, if you're listening, you're probably going to say, well, who cares, Dean? Like, it's a shotgun blast. We throw stuff at the wall, see what sticks, cast a wide net, and some shit bites, some doesn't. And then that's how it works. Yeah, I get it. I'm not saying that the current way of just having these completely untailored, blind, cold outreaches isn't somewhat effective. Obviously it has to be, or you wouldn't be doing it. But you guys are playing a losing short-term game because you're just generating noise. And as I had indicated earlier in this video, when I was an MSP, I'd already gotten the habit of never picking up the phone and talking to a vendor, which already is a problem you created. We didn't create that. MSPs didn't create that. You created it, vendors. You did that. You created the barrier you have to overcome by having such low value horseshit first interactions that no one wants to hear that anymore. And just like what happened with door-to-door sales, right? Once that polish and that expertise wore off, and we saw this in the 70s, this is where this started, that polish and that expertise wore off, and it became anybody can do this job with no training and no standards. What happened within a decade? That industry died. It died off, and door-to-door sales are now regarded as awful. Non-solicitation signs are up everywhere. Nobody wants to be marketed to door-to-door. Almost that entire capability was destroyed. Even to the point now, if I see kids coming up to my door in little uniforms, I'm going to roll my eyes, lock the door, and pretend I'm not home, because I know my time's going to be wasted. And they're kids, right? Like that's what happened by ignoring the fact that once you remove the quality from that kind of interaction, it just becomes noise. And so what I'm seeing now in our space is we're transitioning to in-person events. And in-person events are now going down the same path. Instead of having the highly curated booth experience that very clearly communicated your value proposition to what pain points you solve, with people at the booth who understood the product well, could speak to those pain points and hold an intelligent conversation, it's getting diluted. It's not diluted irrecoverably yet, but it's getting diluted. And more vendors are now relying on in-person events as a crutch. So we're seeing way more and more events getting created. I talk about this all the time. There's over 100 events in our event calendar that we don't attend, but that we have a list of, which is way too many. That is also starting to become noise. And what's going to end up happening as you start turning every one of these my vendor outbound people into just noise, people will stop listening. And the only people they will buy from will be the really big people who can afford to be the noisiest. That doesn't really help anybody, does it, right? Because what have we seen in every other industry that's happened in? You lose out on choice. You're given the illusion of choice instead. Products become pretty terrible, and we're programmed as the consumer to believe that that's our fault and our responsibility. And if you don't believe me, literally look to any other industry at what has happened. Beverages. There was a time where beverages came in glass bottles. You returned them. They were washed. Everything was clean and nice and sustainable. Eventually, beverage industries coalesced to just a few beverage companies that owned everything. Then when there was only a few of them, they were able to get together and say, this is horse shit. We want to make disposable containers because it's cheaper for us to increase our margins. They did that, and then they turned around and started recycling campaigns to blame all of the waste plastic on you. It's your fault, consumer. No, it's not. It's the beverage company's fault. They totally fucked you over. But you see what happens there? And this has happened with tons of other industries. That's just a really good one because it's very obvious that that's happened. That will happen here. And given that most of the vendors that are in the MSP space probably have less than $10 million in revenue, not investment, not total war chest, in customers paying you, probably most of you have less than $10 million in revenue. You're not big players. And you don't have the brand awareness, cloud, or market penetration to go convert from glass bottles to plastic bottles and blame me. So it means that the handful of players who do have that power, they're going to eat you up once you destroy all the traditional channels by filling them with noise. So all of my friends out there that are in soulless, thankless crushing, outbound marketing, cold outreach, cold calling, etc., to MSPs, MSSPs, people who think they're MSPs or MSSPs, or the ecosystem that supports them, just make 5% more effort to come across like you are an intelligent, engaged representative of your brand before you reach out. And if you're a manager of those types of people at your vendor, start incentivizing a little bit more of the right behavior. I mean, first of all, you're going to get better feedback and more leads and more appointments and more customers anyway, so I don't understand why the fuck you're not doing this to begin with. But secondly, you're also gonna not doom our industry and cut off yet another channel of communication that is just completely full of noise. I think you could all do just a little bit better. Have a great Monday.